in the 27th Infantry Brigade of the New York Army National Guard in Syracuse, New York. He served 4 years as an enlisted soldier, and after graduating from Lemoyne College, he was commissioned in 1986. As a second lieutenant, he completed his infantry officer basic course at Fort Benning, Georgia, and is immediately assigned to the 2nd Battalion, 2nd 108th Infantry at Syracuse, where he served for 4 years. In 1991, he assumed command of the Alpha Company, the 2nd 108th in Malone, New York, until his appointment in the battalion's logistic officer in Utica in 1994. As Major Boulio, he assumed command of the HHC 27th Brigade headquarters in Syracuse until May of 2001. He joined the 2nd Brigade, 7th 8th Division of the United States Army Reserve Training Brigade on Fort Drum. It was in the assignment that he was mobilized in 2003 and served as the brigade's operation officer, directing the mobilization efforts to support the war in Iraq. Lieutenant Colonel Boulio assumed command of the 2nd Battalion, 313th Regiment of the Logistical Training Support Battalion on Fort Drum until his retirement in June 2008. In all, Lieutenant Commander Boulio served 26 years in the Armed National Guard and United States Army Reserve. His decorations include 4 Army Commendation Medals, an Army Achievement Medal, and numerous humanitarian and New York State Aid to Civil Authorities Award. He is married, 5 children, and currently employed as the Director of Human Resources for the St. Lawrence County.
I'd like to thank the American Legion Commander, Barry Miner, the VFW Commander, Danny Brooks. I'd like to welcome my fellow veterans and Legionnaires, those of you who are still serving, and I'd especially like to thank my father, CW4 retired Bernard Boulio, who's in the front row. Whenever I'm asked to speak in public, those people who know me say I would love to, because I would never miss the opportunity to get up and have everyone pay attention to me and to hear myself speak. But today, when I was asked to speak at Memorial Day, I said I would be honored, for there's no greater privilege than being able to speak at Memorial Day in front of all the heroes that I see before me. I struggled with what I was going to speak about today, and I often go to my family members, usually without much help. I thought about remembering the soldiers I served with who died in Iraq. I thought about talking about 9/11 and how it changed our lives. And I even thought about talking about all my family members who served so proudly in the military. But then I went back to my family members and my little granddaughter, Ava, 4 years old, and I said, Ava, what do you think I ought to talk about? And she said, Grandpa, I think you ought to talk about 5 minutes so we can get to the cookout. Well, Ava, I'll try to be brief. But today I'm going to talk about remembrance and about defeating evil, about sacrifice, as we honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, and we honor the heroes in our audience today. I am in debt to you all, and I thank you. President Kennedy once said, a nation reveals not only by the men it produces, but also the men it honors, the men it remembers. Today, we remember. I can remember my first days of boot camp. I can remember my last days in command, and I remember my former soldiers and my family members who served. I tell my sons and my daughters that some of the best history can be learned by reading, or in their case, watching movies. I remember the tears I shed watching When We Were Soldiers, Black Hawk Down, and Flags of Our Fathers. Just ask my wife what my favorite movie is, and she will say it's anything with a hill or bridge in its title. So be it a hamburger or a pork chop, be it the bridge over the River Kwai at Remagen or One Too Far, we can remember the soldiers that gave their lives for peace and for freedom, for fulfilling God's will, fighting for family and country, and doing something so that evil would not prevail. I filled my speech with quotes today, And I'm going to share with you my favorite one from Sir Edmund Burke in World War II, when he said, "For evil to prevail, good men must do nothing." This certainly speaks to the American soldier in the greatest country on earth that will not sit by and let evil prevail. The good men and women of America will not just do nothing when evil presents itself. Again, I speak of my 4-year-old granddaughter. She dragged me to Dr. Seuss's The Lorax a few months ago. It was in 3D and it was pretty cool, but at the end there was a moral, and as only Dr. Seuss can phrase a moral, he said, "Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not." I thought of all of you, and again, my veterans. I'm in debt to you, and I thank you. At no time was evil more prevalent than in World War II with the axis of evil, Hitler, Mussolini, and the Emperor of Japan. They were trying to make evil prevail over all of Europe. And when Pearl Harbor was attacked, President Roosevelt proclaimed the day that will live in infamy. Yet I think the better quote came from Japanese General Isoroku Yamato when he said, "I fear we have awoken the sleeping giant." That day of infamy did indeed wake the sleeping giant as we entered World War II to prevent evil from prevailing over the world. And again, I'm reminded that for evil to prevail, good men must do nothing. As I look out at this crowd of heroes and good men and good women who've made sacrifices in order to prevent evil from prevailing, I recall another quote. Historian Victor Davis Hanson said, "Thank God we don't have to fight anyone like ourselves. For there is no greater or stronger fighter or protector of evil than the American soldier." America lost its first colonial soldier in 1775, and I wish I could say that we could stop counting the more than 6,500 from our latest casualties in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yet I believe we are still fighting in order to prevent evil wherever it may be. Today we remember and honor our veterans, those who died because they cared a whole awful lot and would not just do nothing while evil attempted to prevail. Many died protecting our country, and many more died protecting one another. They died so that evil could not take the thing and the things we value most: our freedom, our love of God, family, and country. God, family, and country. My wife often argues with me as to which order I say those three words, but we know that those are the principles from which we honor our soldiers' sacrifices. I had the honor while serving at Fort Benning as a lieutenant of meeting Colonel Hal Moore, who was portrayed by Mel Gibson in the movie When We Were Soldiers. He spoke of family. He spoke of the men that he lost in the Drang Valley in Vietnam. He said their dying thoughts were always of family. "Take care of my family. Tell my wife I love her," were their dying words. Memorial Day is a day when we make sense of our history in terms of the sacrifices our soldier made for a better nation and a better world. We are reminded of the sacrifices they made to gain freedom, retain freedom, or establish peace. The American soldier makes sacrifices for God, family, and country. And whether it's the sacrifices made by them or their families, missing their children's births, their birth dates, first steps, their first words, their athletic events, their concerts, their graduations, or the heaviest sacrifices made by our wounded warriors, or those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, America is grateful, and today we remember and we give thanks. The beginning of war lies in remembrance. Today, May 28, 2012, we remember. As we paraded through the streets, much like they did in Charleston, South Carolina, where the first Memorial Day celebration took place. Then it was a group of freed slaves and Union soldiers. Today it's our veterans of the modern wars, our soldiers that are serving and march in remembrance of our fallen brothers and sacrifices all of you made for God, family, and country. We remember those good men and women who cared a whole awful lot, and for those who did something so that evil would not prevail. I conclude with a quote from General Patton, where he proclaimed, "America loves a winner." All of you here are winners. I'm in debt to you, and I thank you. It has been an honor to speak here today. May God bless our fallen brothers. May God bless all of you, and may God bless America. Thank you.